Dear learners, welcome back to WSE Legendary Lives, where learning English opens the doors to ancient wisdom and timeless tales. Let your imagination awaken as we step into a world sculpted by myth, thunder, and fate. Today, we journey into the stormy heart of Olympus. Our story is about a god who ruled not only the skies, but the very will of heaven and earth. His name has echoed across temples, poems, and thunderclaps. He is worshipped as the supreme ruler, feared by gods and mortals alike. Yet behind his mighty presence, there lies something far more human: ambition, betrayal, and a struggle for control. This is not just a tale of lightning bolts and divine power. It is the story of Zeus, the king of gods, whose strength was matched only by his flaws. He wielded justice, but sometimes ignored it. He upheld order, yet often caused chaos. Through his rise, battles, and uneasy rule, we witness a mirror of ourselves, a reflection of our hunger for power, our fear of losing control, and our longing for meaning in a world of uncertainty. Prepare to enter a world where gods and mortals meet, where every trial hides a truth, and every thunderclap speaks to the human soul. Let the legend begin. Long before Zeus sat upon his throne atop Mount Olympus, the world was a dark and chaotic place, ruled by ancient forces far older than the gods we know today. In the beginning, there was only the void, a vast emptiness called chaos. From that nothingness emerged Gaia, the earth, and Uranus, the sky. They birthed the Titans, colossal beings of raw power and primal instinct. Among these Titans was Cronus, Zeus's father, a ruler who once overthrew his own father in a desperate attempt to escape a cursed fate. But fate, in myth, is never truly escaped. For Cronus, too, was given a terrible prophecy: one day, one of his own children would rise against him, just as he had risen against his father. Determined to defy destiny, Cronus made a dreadful choice. One by one, as each of his children was born, he swallowed them whole, trapping them inside his stomach. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, all lost to the dark prison of their father's fear. But fate, like lightning, finds its path. When Rhea, Cronus's wife, gave birth to her sixth child, she could bear no more. In secret, she hid the newborn and wrapped a stone in swaddling cloth instead. Cronus, blind with paranoia, devoured the stone without a second thought. The child she saved was Zeus. Raised in secret in a cave on the island of Crete, Zeus was protected by a loyal band of warriors who beat their shields to mask his cries from the ears of Cronus. He drank the milk of a magical goat named Amalthea and grew strong, sharp, and watchful. Even as a boy, he gazed upward at the sky with a fierce intensity, sensing, perhaps, that his place was not below, but above. Zeus did not simply inherit power, he was born from fear, secrecy, and the hope that justice could one day be restored. His early life was a mixture of solitude and destiny, shaped by the knowledge that his brothers and sisters were not dead, but living within a god's prison. This background gave Zeus more than courage. It gave him a purpose. He was not raised to rule because he desired power. He was raised to free. But the question that lingers throughout his myth is this: did he free others, or only himself? For now, the winds of prophecy had shifted. Zeus had survived what his siblings could not. The sky stirred. And somewhere deep in the shadows of Olympus, thunder was beginning to form. As Zeus grew into a young god, his strength and cunning became undeniable. But the world he was destined to rule was still under the tight grip of Cronus. The Titans dominated the cosmos, and fear was the law of the land: fear of change, fear of rebellion, fear of fate itself. Yet Zeus could not ignore the fire inside him. It was not just the memory of his hidden upbringing, or the knowledge that his siblings remained trapped in the belly of a tyrant. It was a deeper yearning, for justice, for balance, for a world not governed by fear. The imbalance was clear. Cronus had turned fatherhood into control, love into domination, and destiny into something to devour. Zeus's first great challenge was not a war, not yet. It was the decision to confront that which all gods feared, the legacy of their own blood. With the help of the wise Titaness Métis, a goddess of deep thought and foresight, Zeus devised a daring plan. He did not seek open combat, not yet. Instead, he offered Cronus a cup of enchanted drink, laced with powerful herbs. When the drink took hold, Cronus convulsed, and then, one by one, he vomited up Zeus's brothers and sisters, fully formed and reborn into the world. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon. Zeus did not act alone. He built alliances. He awakened family. And most importantly, he restored those who had been silenced. But this act, bold and righteous as it was, did not restore peace. In fact, it did the opposite. It cracked open the order of the world. Cronus, furious and humiliated, would not surrender power easily. And the other Titans, bound by loyalty, pride, or fear, rallied to his side. What began as a clever trick became a thunderous storm of divine conflict. Zeus now stood not as a rebel in hiding, but as a challenger in the open. The heavens rumbled. The lines were drawn. This was no longer about family. It was about the soul of the cosmos. But even now, before the first lightning bolt had flown, a new kind of imbalance began to emerge, one not in the skies, but in Zeus himself. He had tasted leadership. He had felt the fire of divine justice. But also, perhaps, the intoxication of being the one others turned to, the one they feared. That quiet seed, barely noticeable, would one day bloom. Still, the time for reflection had passed. The storm was coming. And so, with his siblings by his side and the winds of destiny howling through the mountains, Zeus prepared for war. But war against the Titans was no simple struggle. It would last 10 years. Shake the roots of creation. And leave scars that even gods could not erase. The war between the Olympians and the Titans erupted with a force the cosmos had never seen. It was called the Titanomachy, a clash that turned mountains into rubble and skies into storms. Zeus and his siblings, still young by divine standards, faced a battle against beings who had shaped the very fabric of existence. The Titans were not merely strong. They were ancient, born of Gaia and Uranus, pulsing with primal authority. Cronus, though weakened by betrayal, still held dominion over vast stretches of power. And behind him stood the mighty Atlas, the brutal Iapetus, and many others whose names inspired dread. At first, the Olympians faltered. Their youth and unity could not match the raw might of the Titans. The skies burned, the earth cracked, and thunder became the language of war. But Zeus, unwilling to surrender, turned inward and asked a dangerous question: how far would I go to win? In this moment of near defeat, Zeus descended into the deepest pit of the underworld, Tartarus. There, bound in chains forged by Uranus himself, lay three monstrous beings, the Cyclopes and the Centimanes. The Cyclopes, one-eyed giants, were famed for their craftsmanship. The Centimanes, hundred-handed giants, were forces of pure chaos and strength. Even the Titans feared them. They had been imprisoned by Cronus long ago, hidden away not because they were evil, but because they were powerful and unpredictable. Zeus did what Cronus never dared. He released them. And in return, they gifted him weapons of unimaginable power. The Cyclopes forged the thunderbolt, raw, divine fire that could split the sky in two. To Poseidon, they gave the trident, which stirred oceans and shook the earth. And to Hades, they offered the helm of darkness, which rendered the wearer unseen by any god or mortal. Now the war began anew. With these weapons, and the ferocity of the freed giants behind him, Zeus turned the tide. Battle after battle, mountain after mountain, the Olympians pushed the Titans back. Yet this victory was not swift. It cost them dearly. The world trembled under the weight of their wrath. Rivers dried. Trees wept. Even the stars seemed to dim. And through it all, Zeus changed. Each decision he made in battle, to unleash a storm that swallowed a valley, to call down fire upon a mountain where mortals once worshipped, carved something into his soul. He began to understand the loneliness of command, the weight of being the final voice. Was he still the boy in the cave, longing to bring justice? Or had he become something colder, something closer to the father he once defied? Still, the war surged forward. In the final clash, Zeus faced Cronus in single combat. Thunder and sickle met in the air. Sky roared against time itself. And when Cronus fell, a silence settled over the cosmos, heavy and uncertain. Zeus had won. The Titans were defeated. Many were cast into Tartarus, chained as Cronus once had chained the giants. Atlas, as punishment for his defiance, was condemned to hold up the sky for eternity, a symbol of unbearable burden. But victory came with a question that still lingers in myths. Did Zeus free the world from tyranny, or simply place himself at the top of a new one? The age of the Titans had ended. A new era was born, one ruled not by ancient force, but by thunder. But that was only the beginning. An even greater challenge awaited Zeus. For ruling the world would prove far harder than winning it. With the Titans defeated, Zeus ascended to power not as a lone ruler, but as the center of a new divine order. From the heights of Mount Olympus, he and his siblings formed the pantheon that would shape Greek myth for ages to come. Poseidon claimed the sea. Hades took the underworld. Hera, Demeter, and Hestia watched over the realms of family, harvest, and hearth. Zeus, however, took the sky, and with it, the throne of Olympus. He was not elected. He was not born into peaceful succession. He had taken his place through thunder and force. And that force, now victorious, settled like a crown of fire upon his head. At first, the new age held promise. Zeus established laws among gods and mortals alike. He kept chaos at bay and punished those who defied cosmic order. He rewarded loyalty and courage. He brought light to places where darkness had once ruled. But slowly, cracks began to appear, not in the world, but in Zeus himself. Though he ruled with vision and strength, Zeus also ruled with fear. He was quick to anger, and quicker still to strike with his thunderbolt. He became obsessed with maintaining control, not only over Olympus but over fate itself. And above all, he could not bear to be defied. The great trial of Zeus's reign did not come from another war, but from within his own house. It came in the form of rebellion, led not by an enemy, but by those he trusted most. His wife, Hera. His brothers, Poseidon and Hades. Even his daughter, Athena. They had seen what Zeus refused to acknowledge, that his rule was becoming more tyrannical than just. He had begun to treat Olympus not as a council, but as his possession. When others spoke, he silenced them. When mortals begged for mercy, he answered with storms. His desire to impose order had twisted into control. And so, the gods plotted in secret. They created a plan to chain Zeus in his sleep, to take from him the thunderbolt, and redistribute power among the Olympians. It was not a plan to destroy him, but to remind him that Olympus was not his alone. They nearly succeeded. One night, while the king of gods slept, they bound him with enchanted chains. His thunderbolt lay cold beside him. The skies grew still. But Thetis, the sea nymph, and Briareus, the hundred-handed giant, remained loyal. They freed Zeus before the rebellion could take full shape. And when Zeus awoke, the sky cracked in fury. He punished the traitors harshly. Hera was hung from the heavens by golden chains. Poseidon and Apollo were banished from Olympus and forced to serve mortals. The rebellion was crushed, but something else had broken. Trust. Zeus had passed the trial. He remained king. But the gods looked at him differently now. Not as a protector, but as a ruler who ruled by fear, not love. And Zeus, too, was changed. In the quiet that followed, he began to sense a shadow he could not command, his own flaw. He had overthrown a tyrant, only to become one. He had liberated the world, only to bind it under his own command. It was this realization, not the thunderbolt or the throne, that marked the true turning point in Zeus's story. And so we must ask, do you think this myth still carries meaning in our modern world? Is it simply a fantasy of power, or a mirror to something inside all of us? As we move forward, the myth will take a different shape, no longer about war or rebellion, but about a god learning to live with power, and with himself. In the years that followed the failed rebellion, Zeus ruled with a more measured hand, but the echoes of distrust lingered like distant thunder. He still held the thunderbolt. The other gods still bowed. But something deeper had been shaken. He had learned that fear could rule Olympus, but not bind loyalty. Zeus began to shift. Not out of humility, but out of necessity. He started to listen more. Consult more. He allowed Athena, his wise daughter, to advise him in matters of law and justice. He gave more space to Apollo's voice in the arts and prophecy. Even Hermes, the messenger, became a quiet compass for balance between divine will and mortal chaos. Yet despite these changes, Zeus remained haunted by something no thunderbolt could strike down, the fate of humankind. Mortals had once revered the gods with awe and sacrifice. But over time, they began to question, rebel, and drift. They built their own cities, made their own decisions. Zeus watched as humanity, once small and trembling, grew bold. With fire in their hands and thought in their hearts, mortals began to shape the world without Olympus. Then came Prometheus. A titan who had once sided with Zeus during the war, Prometheus became a symbol of defiance, not against power, but on behalf of humanity. He gave mortals fire. He gave them knowledge. He gave them hope. And in doing so, he defied Zeus's will. For Zeus believed that too much power in mortal hands would lead to ruin. He saw Prometheus's act not as kindness, but as dangerous pride. And so, in an act that marked both judgment and fear, Zeus punished Prometheus in one of the most brutal myths ever told. He chained him to a rock, high in the Caucasus Mountains. There, each day, an eagle would come to tear at his liver. And each night, it would grow back, so the torment would never end. To many, this punishment seemed cruel, even tyrannical. But for Zeus, it was more than revenge. It was a warning, to mortals, to gods, and to himself. He feared a world where he was no longer needed. He feared losing control. And in that fear, we see the deepest flaw of all, not rage, not pride, but the terror of being forgotten. Yet even this act, however harsh, planted a seed of change. Zeus saw the pain in the world, not just in Prometheus, but in the mortals who suffered storms, droughts, and fate's indifference. He began to send signs through oracles, visions through dreams, and rain when the earth cracked in thirst. He began, slowly, to shift from punisher to protector. It was not perfection. He still strayed. He still raged. He still took what he desired, in love, in war, in pride. But Zeus, in this stage of his myth, became more than a god of power. He became a god of paradox. He ruled Olympus with thunder, and with longing. He commanded the sky, but could not command love. He held the world in his gaze, but never truly understood it. And perhaps that is his true transformation, not becoming wise, or gentle, or just, but becoming aware that no god, no matter how mighty, can hold the world still. Lightning may strike fast, but life moves slower. It grows. It learns. It forgets. It changes. So too did Zeus. And that is why, when we speak of him not just as a king, but as a myth, we speak of more than thunder. We speak of the storm inside us all. In the aftermath of his greatest trials, the war with the Titans, the rebellion of the gods, and the punishment of Prometheus, Zeus entered the longest phase of his rule, not war, but watchfulness. Olympus settled into rhythm. The great pantheon took shape beneath his throne. Poseidon ruled the seas with deep mood and shifting tides. Hades, withdrawn but steady, watched over the realm of the dead. Demeter brought the harvests, and Apollo, the sun and music. Athena, born from Zeus's own mind, guided the cities and minds of men. And Zeus, he watched over them all. He became the voice in the thunder, the judgment in storms, the presence felt in times of trial. Mortals feared his wrath, yes, but they also prayed to him for rain, for justice, for guidance. He was no longer simply a king of gods, he had become a symbol of order in a world filled with chaos. But peace did not mean perfection. Zeus's reign was marked by contradictions. He protected oaths, yet broke his own. He punished arrogance in mortals, but often acted with boundless pride. His love affairs, countless, impulsive, and sometimes cruel, birthed heroes, monsters, and myths alike. Hercules, Perseus, Helen of Troy. Each was touched by Zeus, yet each carried the weight of his flaws. The world under his reign was not flawless, but it endured. For better or worse, he kept the cosmic balance intact. And that is what makes his legacy complex and deeply human. Unlike later monotheistic gods, Zeus was not perfect. He did not claim to be. He ruled not because he was morally superior, but because he was the one who could bear the weight of fate, fear, and flame. He was, in essence, the god who won, and then spent eternity learning what it meant to lead. His greatest legacy may not lie in his victories or punishments, but in the endurance of his myth. For thousands of years, Zeus remained in the minds of poets, sculptors, philosophers, and seekers. He was not forgotten, not because he was good, but because he was undeniable. He represented the eternal struggle between power and restraint, between passion and wisdom, between justice and control. And perhaps, deep down, that is why humans related to him. Not because he was above them, but because, in many ways, he reflected them. As centuries passed, empires rose and fell, but the stories of Zeus lived on. His image, bearded and stern, crowned with lightning, became a symbol of divine authority. His name echoed in law, sky, and story. And yet, what remains most powerful about his legacy is not what Zeus commanded, but what he could never fully control, the hearts of others. He could summon storms, but not love. He could silence rebellion, but not doubt. He could govern Olympus, but not his own shadow. And in that tension, Zeus became eternal. What, then, does the myth of Zeus truly mean? Is it merely a tale of storms and seduction, or does it speak to something deeper, something that echoes in the chambers of our own lives? Zeus's story is not one of clear morality. It is not about good versus evil, or perfection over failure. Rather, it is the story of power, how it is claimed, how it is held, and how easily it can be corrupted or misunderstood. At his best, Zeus represents our longing for justice, the part of us that rises to protect, to restore balance, to guide with strength. His thunderbolt is not just a weapon, it is a symbol of decisive action in the face of chaos. We admire him because we, too, wish to rise above fear, to lead when others falter. But at his worst, Zeus reveals the danger of unchecked authority. He reminds us that even those who begin with noble intentions can be blinded by control, ego, or desire. His punishments, especially to those who disobey or question him, show how easily power can turn inward and become its own prison. Through Zeus, ancient Greeks explored the fragile line between order and tyranny, a lesson that remains painfully relevant in our world today. In governments, workplaces, families, wherever authority exists, so too does the risk of misusing it. His story also reflects a truth about leadership that is rarely comfortable, that strength must be tempered by humility, and that wisdom comes not from control, but from listening. Symbolically, Zeus is not just a god of thunder, he is a mirror of our internal storms. The anger we struggle to contain. The fear of losing control. The deep need to be respected, even when we're unsure we deserve it. He also teaches us something about growth. For though Zeus was often flawed, he was not static. He changed. He learned. He tried, however imperfectly, to become more than a conqueror. And in doing so, he offers us a strange kind of hope, that even the mighty must face their shadows, and that facing them is what makes the myth last. So, dear listeners, ask yourself, what deeper message or truth do you see in this myth? Is Zeus simply a god from an old story, or a reflection of the struggles we all carry within us? In the next and final part, we'll close this journey through Olympus with quiet reflection and a farewell that reaches far beyond myth. This legend may be ancient, but its message lives on. Thunder may shake the sky, but it is the storm within that we must learn to face. Zeus, the king of gods, ruled Olympus with lightning and law, but also with longing, contradiction, and pain. He reminds us that greatness often walks hand in hand with imperfection, that those who lead are never without flaw, and those who fall are never beyond reflection. Behind the myth lies a mirror, not just to the heavens, but to the human soul. We all carry thunder inside us, moments of pride, moments of fear, and moments where our choices ripple far beyond what we see. Perhaps that is why the myth of Zeus has endured across the centuries. Not because we worship him, but because we recognize him. In the tensions of power. In the burden of decisions. In the silent desire to be both strong and understood. So now we ask you, quietly, which part of this story stayed with you the most, and why? Do you feel this ancient legend speaks to your life in some way? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story moved you, consider sharing it, pass the legend on. And don't forget to subscribe to WSE Legendary Lives, where every tale is more than a myth, it's a journey through the truths that shape us. Until next time, may your heart stay open, and your spirit curious. Farewell for now, and remember, even in a world of gods, it is the human within the divine that makes the legend truly timeless.